I think we did it. I think we're in.
Perfect. All righty. Thanks everyone for joining. Amy has a lot to go over today, so we wanted to make sure to be able to fit it all in. We'll go ahead and get started right now as people start filtering in. Uh, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're calling in from. My name is Wyatt. I'm one of the people operations managers at Talent to Team, and I'm very excited for you to all join us in listening to Amy Giggy Burns, CEO and founder, going over building your talent strategy. Let's get started.
Here we go. All right. So this is the framework that we use internally at Talent to Team to help our clients build their talent strategies. Many of you are likely using all of this very organically, but I think it helps to understand the frameworks. So, quick, a little bit about us, who we are. We're a team of about 25 HR professionals from various different organizations, different types of backgrounds and industries, and we come together to work with the best clients in the world who we absolutely love to build incredible people teams. We have HR services, recruiting, immigration services, and mergers and acquisitions. So, my goal for this, and we like to take our clients through this when we start as well, is that you understand the frameworks of how your talent strategy is built within your organization. And it feels fair, it feels tangible to you, and you're able to kind of affect it and see, where maybe the parts of the hypothesis had gone awry. And I do say that this is a hypothesis because we're doing the best to predict who do we need for what roles to get our organization from point A to point B. And we typically want to revisit this hypothesis in a year is a great amount of time to look, but you can also do 6 months. However, if you make changes in a lot of different places and in a shorter time span, it can be harder to understand what part of the hypothesis was off. So, what questions are we answering with a talent strategy? Where are we now as an organization? Where are we going? How fast do we need to get there? Who do we think can get us there? What do we need to pay to attract and retain them? How do we know if it's working? And then, if it's not working, how do we identify which part of the hypothesis is wrong? So we're all using these foundations a lot of times just more intuitively. This is more helpful to kind of stop and say, okay, I was trying to get from a stage one to a stage two, and maybe I didn't have the right team in place, or I needed additional support. And that helps, it helps you understand what the issue might actually be.
Awesome. And quickly,
Oh,
speaking
yeah.
of questions, actually,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
anyone has questions along the way, there is a Q&A section. There's a button at the bottom of your screen. You can submit questions there. We'll review them, and I'm happy to interrupt Amy to get an answer to those questions as well there. So feel free to send those questions in through the chat.
Perfect. Yeah. Questions or things that you've experienced or something you want us to go deeper on. We are used to this being quite an interactive conversation. And this is a different format. So, yeah, please do write in. So, where are we now? Where are we going? There are four stages of a business. Don't get attached to the revenue numbers because these are estimates and it can be a lot depending on what your industry is. It can be a lot different. But the phase one of startup, you're focused on, is this a thing? Is this a real business? Or how do I am I you're kind of figuring out product market fit. Stage two, we've got product market fit. That's happening. Now we have to hire people so that we can expand. Stage three, it's about streamlining process, systems, repeatability. And stage four, renewal or decline. And there's kind of transition pieces between each. There's times where you take a step back to go step forward. But this talent is going to be different. Who you want at each stage of business is going to be a little bit different. So a stage one person, that's someone who's has a real good comfort level with risk because they're signing on either full time or part time to something that doesn't fully exist yet. And they're really good with ambiguity. So that think people that you would invite into the garage to, figure out what are we building? Is this the next, Apple computer, what have you? It's subject matter experts. So let's say that you're in the biosciences field, it's probably a scientist, or it could be friends, family. That's where, you do end up with a lot of organizations that are comprised of family in the founding team. But they're probably a high risk tolerance. They may start part time. You may start part time, but at some point it's going to be all right. We got to commit. We're going to launch and commit. Stage two, those are your early adapters. Those are people who come in and they see the vision with you and they thrive in, kind of taking all the pieces, could be outside of their job scope, often is, but they thrive in the environment of building something together. I've used this term and it's kind of just that culture, it's the glue and the team is the glue and everyone is wearing several hats, typically. And the thing that you rely on most is the team dynamic, the shared mission. So the biggest leap really usually is moving from stage two to stage three. In stage two, the career trajectory looks a lot more like chutes and ladders, especially when you're moving from two to three. Because I could be the director of operations one day and the office manager the next, depending on the growth, depending on our financial backing and our speed. So it is really interesting. We start to get the pressure to move into a direction of where's my opportunities in the company, but in a stage two, people really build their own opportunities. Now, stage three, these are your specialists. So stage three goes from, we are let's say 200-person organization all the way up to 15,000 people. And so people start to specialize, you start to silo. That's where you can build your career ladders. But the focus is really let's build process systems. Let's make it really repeatable. We're focusing on building a business rather than a person or a persona. And those career trajectories are quite linear and easy for people to understand. Now, challenges a lot of people face who are stage three type personas is going down to a stage two and saying, well, I've seen what it looks like in this big organization. I can get us there. But sometimes that can be a real challenge because you have to be really comfortable, coming into something that needs to be built. And then stage four, those are our, high risk tolerance. We're either winding this down, we're doing a soft landing through an acquisition, or we're going to kind of start selling off different pieces of it, assets. Sorry, I see in the chat. I guess I do get alerted.
Yeah, and that's a great question. So, what have you found to be the average time frame through the different stages from startup to that maturity level?
Um, e- every I don't have it. Is the really quick answer. I don't know. It totally depends on the organization's desire to grow. Especially if it's a founder-led organization, it can be really challenging to bring in other people and to kind of let go of all of the hats that you wear, and that can take a little bit longer. But if we're saying the organization is going to go from zero to $7 million, let's say, in revenue as a services business, that could take 12 years. It really depends on speed, but that's a great question because we're going to go into speed next. So stage four, also a lot of consultants, people who can kind of help you sell your business or help you wind down or help you re-energize a part of it, break it off from the rest. The speed that I said was coming next, these are just the terms that I use. They're not technical terms, but it helps me contextualize how are we building things. So I use marathon, kind of slow and steady. We're consistent. We are building a potentially a lifestyle business, or we have enough structure built that we are able to, really make it a 40 or 45-hour work week. Sprint, that one is, a little bit more grueling, a little bit more intense, probably especially when you're moving between a stage two to a stage three business. Lots of sprints, And then into the obstacle races, that is intense. That is, we've got to get this going. We've got to IPO. We have to beat other people to market. I don't want to hire anyone who wants work-life balance. That's not going to be a good fit. My expectations is we're working constantly. There's very, very little boundaries. Um, so it's you don't just pick one. And what I've noticed with our clients is we'll have a mixture of a couple. So there's, we're mostly marathon. We have some sprint pace, some sprint sprinkled in, maybe on a quarterly basis or something. The reason that this is valuable is you start to think about sustainability of your team. So if am growing an organization that is switching between sprint and obstacle race, I can't hire anyone who needs to be built, grown, developed. I need to hire people who come in and they know they can hit the ground running. And I'm also only going to expect them to be here for a few years, if I expect the burnout to be really hard and if I don't have long-term incentive structures. So we're really with the pace, you're also going to start to be able to predict a little bit the longevity of your team.
Quick question, Amy. How have you
Yeah.
seen like those stages and the pacing vary for nonprofit clients?
For nonprofit clients, I think it depends on the maturity of the how well we've built out the vision for where we're headed, how quickly we need to get there. And then the other thing I was thinking is, from a leadership team perspective, how mature does each department need to be? And do we have, the funds to hire in been there, done that directors, or do we have the ability to develop them up? And so I think that's how I've seen pacing impact it. Also, all of our nonprofits got hit this past year with budget cuts and changes in funding. And so everyone's paces spiked to figure out, if we need to change our funding strategy, how are we doing that to survive?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So who is going to get us here? So we have what stage of a business are we? We have what are the paces that we're going through? And then it's now we're going to move into what are the talent strategy types. So in an accountability matrix, this is just an example. These are the different pieces that are shown, the different functions of a business. This is in relation to EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. So everything rolls up into the integrator. Above that is the CEO. So when we do our accountability exercises at the end of the year, what we do is we wipe everybody off of the accountability exercise. We kind of put ourselves in the position of an outside consultant, take everybody off, and then rebuild this accountability matrix based on who we think or what roles we think the organization needs to get to achieve our goals in the next year. And then we start to bring the people back on to the accountability matrix. The thing I like about EOS is we also, you do have multiple people sitting in the same seat. So, for example, in my company, I'm the CEO, the integrator, and sales. And so the goal would be to kind of start peeling me off of additional layers within the organization. So we start with what does the business need? And then we start to bring the talent back onto the map. So there are four talent strategy types. The first one is build. So this is someone who they're potentially new to the job market, or they're new to this industry, or they're new to this role. So someone maybe could have had a job change, and they are going to learn, from the ground up, or maybe they just have a little bit of experience, how to do the role. And so it's an incredible resource within the team. Typically, lots of excitement and enthusiasm to learn what they're learning, but needing the structure to be successful. The second one is buy. So this is, you're going to bring in someone who's been there, done that. They've got a couple reps out, doing either the nonprofits or doing, fundraising, taking a company all the way through an IPO or an exit of some sort. And you pay a higher price point for that. The downfall that we sometimes have with buy talent when we're hiring them is, do they have the stamina for more, especially if we're going to be at a really fast pace? Are they ready to do that, or are they willing and ready to develop the build talent? So if build is part of your model, The buy talent needs to be willing to support and develop them up through the ranks. Borrow is fractional white labeled resources. You can borrow build talent, you can borrow buy talent. There's a lot of options out in the market, and it's only increased in the last couple of years. And you can also say the way that I like to use borrow in my company strategically is we know that we are going through this really intense phase of growth, and I want to bring in someone who's really good at that phase of growth because then once we're on the other side, I want to hire someone who's going to maintain what we built in this, small type. I used to say, it would be nice if our employment offers, if it was really like time bound, if it was for a year, especially in a startup, because things change so quickly, that it's hard to say, hey, I'm offering you this chief marketing role and it works for us right now. You're the perfect person at a stage 2 business. But when we hit stage 3, it's really hard to give that person the demotion. And so that's where fractional comes in really well. We know what stages we're good at and we know when to bow out. And that's, another way to handle those areas of growth. So, bot, we are starting to supplement our hiring plans with software expenses. This could be AI, it could be other software expenses. But what I want to see, and it doesn't line up well on the P&L, is I want to see the cost of software decrease to in partnership with revenue. So revenue should go up, software costs should go down. And that then also I want to track, am I making less hires or am I giving the people that I have the tools that they need and they're more successful? And so I don't need 3 people, I need one person. That's the other piece that we want to start looking at when we're looking at budgeting for the year ahead. So, when we're building our team, it's really important to bring in this framework and context. Our individual contributor, our goal is I'm going to come in, I'm going to crush it at my job and what I do. I'm going to contribute to the culture, I'm going to be engaged, but my focus is really crushing it on the goals that I've been given. At a management level, we own the process. We are, bringing in improvements. We're removing obstacles. We're advocating for our teams. We're making sure that our executive team knows here's kind of where I can see some challenges coming ahead. And then our executives are setting the vision, providing the resources, aligning management with strategy, making sure everybody is on the bus, facing forward, excited about where we're headed. So when I'm building a talent strategy, the other thing that I start to think about with my clients is you don't necessarily need um, to have not all turnover is bad turnover, especially when you're going through these stages of growth. And so if I redid my accountability matrix, I have, okay, we're going from here to here in the next 12 months. This is the type of company we're going to be on the other side. I might set my hiring target tenure for 2 to 4 years. If I get 2 to 4 years out of this specific role, then I am 100% at what I expected to be. I feel like my investment has been served very well. My hypothesis was correct. So I'm just throwing these numbers out randomly. They could be shorter, they could be longer, but I do want to introduce the concept of it's okay to have turnover, especially because sometimes companies grow faster than people do, and it can be a lot of change. So the last question we need to answer is then part of the hypothesis is what do we need to pay to attract and retain the talent that we have selected according to our stage of a business, our pace of a business, and our talent strategy. So this is when we get into compensation philosophies. The question is, how do we reward and incentivize our team? So compensation is made up of you've got the base salary, you've got variable compensation, which could be long-term incentives, short-term incentives. You've got benefits and then perks. And I pull perks and benefits apart because benefits are typically regulated, like health or dental, whereas perks are something that we can really stop at any time. It's something that's if budget allows. So when we're determining market rates, these are an example of some of the tools that we use. I love them because it's not the same as the salary data that you have to rely on an HR team to fill out, and then you wait for an hour for or a year, excuse me, for organizations to look at and then send out to you. This is live data. So Pave, OpenComp, Carta, they sit on top of your HRAS, which is your payroll system, and they pull that information into their system. And so they are live benchmarking you across all of the clients that they have. The reason I like to look at a couple of different options is to see, are there any big variances? Some of these, like Pave, for example, has got a lot of tech in it. OpenComp has been good for nonprofits, and Carta is what kind of a newer one. And so we're always just, how big are the variances across them? But these are the tools that we use. I want to say Pave is still free. Yeah, we have a subscription to OpenComp. I like it because it was built by compensation experts. And then Carta as well is pretty good. These tools, you can use them in a couple different ways. You can use it to look up salaries and benchmark your team across. But you can also use them for total reward statements. So if you buy an instance of each of these, it's plugged into your HR tool. It can help your employees understand, where am I relevant to market? How much does the company spend on me? And helps them kind of have that um, peace of mind, because they think there's studies out there that most people think they're undercompensated. And so these tools are so helpful because they empower everybody with the information. So when we go into these tools, what we want to build off of are compensation philosophies. So I'm going to explain really quick. I'm going to talk about percentiles. So the 50th percentile means you're meeting the market. You're right in the middle. So 50th percentile, that's the average, that everyone's getting paid in this role at this level. The 75th percentile, you're 25% above market. And hopefully that makes sense. But so that's kind of what we'll chat about as we go in, but please ask questions. So there are 7 compensation philosophies. The first is competitive. So competitive is a good example. We had a client who we benchmarked everyone to the 75th percentile, and every year we re-benchmarked everyone to the 75th percentile, and their compensation was automatically calculated. It all went into salary. We didn't have bonus plans left over. It was just guaranteed compensation. What it didn't take into consideration was performance. So that was completely outside of this. And people didn't have to worry. They knew that they were being paid well above market. And the focus of this client was, we are going to IPO in the next 18 months, and we need people to stop focusing or arguing about compensation. And so we need to really hit these targets. So it was kind of a short play. The reason I bring that up is because it's not terribly sustainable as a compensation strategy, especially if you adopted this in 2021 or 2022, because that's when we had some really inflated salaries. The other thing is, if your goal is to grow and to sell your business at some point, this would be a deterrent to a future buyer, because if they already have a team and they're just doing market rates at the 50th percentile, it would be hard for them to absorb the compensation of your team. It would be hard for them to believe that your team is going to come over if they have to take a decrease in compensation. So this one isn't terribly sustainable. We did end up seeing some layoffs in companies who adopted it. However, it did serve a purpose. And then for some roles, it um, competitive was absolutely necessary. And we'll talk about that when we get into Market Plus. So the next one, this is the most common one. To me, it's pretty sustainable. It's pay for performance. So you set your target at the 50th percentile, and the goal is that employees can earn beyond that. So they can earn, let's say, even all the way up to the 75th, who knows, 80th percentile with compensation, but that is a shared risk between the employee and the company. It's based on both company performance and individual performance. And the reason why this I feel is more sustainable, you do tend to see less layoffs because the market rate is sustainable. And then the incentives are based on if we actually have money to pay that out. At the bottom, you'll see I have kind of the split that I think makes the most sense, which is, an individual contributor in a pay for performance model. Typically 75% of your compensation is based on your own performance, and 25% is based on how the company overall performs. Manager, you do more of a 50-50 split. And then executive, it's 25% personal, 75% organization. And the goal there is you want to align people more and more to working cross functionally to the success of the business. I said the chat coming in, so I'll stop.
Awesome. Great question. Are these compensation philosophies suitable for all startup stages? And can you talk a little bit more about how they relate to those stages?
Um, are they? Yes, they I do think that they are sustainable for all of the stages. I think it depends on the overall picture. So again, if you're going from a stage one to a stage two, you might adapt more of a competitive um, stage or more of a competitive compensation philosophy if you're venture backed and you need to I'm going to use the example of AI. AI talent is really really hard to find, and so to really get your business off of the ground you might have to adopt competitive for a while, and the best way that I would suggest doing that is, if possible, through borrow talent, through fractional talent, because again, as you get into this stable footing, you might need to kind of taper off. You may have potentially overcommitted on the compensation side. I'm sorry, Wyatt, say the question again. Did I hit most of the parts?
Yeah, are these compensation philosophies suitable for all startup stages?
I think yeah, it depends. Depends on the goals. I think that I have seen them all in startups. I have seen them at all different stages as well.
Yeah, I also think it really ties into the pacing as well. So, a
Mhm.
company that's starting and they're sprinting maybe potentially for an acquisition or IPO, they may be focused more on competitive so they can bring in that talent who has the experience of been there, done that to help
Mhm.
accelerate the speed of where the company is going as well. I think it's interesting because
Yeah.
all of these things tie into each other and come out with, different results depending on how you combine them.
Yeah, and I mean, think about going back to the basics of how to build the or the compensation philosophy. There's a lot of different pieces of compensation. So I also want to divorce the idea from that you're picking one for your entire organization. You can pick, and we'll, again, there's another compensation strategy we'll talk about, but you can pick different ones for different functions of the business. For example, sales always makes sense to be in a pay for performance type of a model because you want to pay them on what they're able to deliver. There may be really hard to find roles that you have to pay at the competitive level because they are integral to your ability to build and run the business. So, yeah, these can vary by stage, they can vary by role. What they should not vary by is person. So you want to be careful about that. Make sure that you're tying the compensation to the role or to the level, even. So the next one, cost of compensation. I see this mostly in services-based business. It could be, I'm going to pay you 50% of your billable rate, and it's going to vary based on what we bill you out at and kind of how you develop up the chain. But it's kind of a percentage, it's an equation, and that's how that gets impacted. Mission based, interestingly enough, I don't see this as much in our nonprofits as I do in some of our for profits with long term incentive programs like IPOing. So, mission based as our cash compensation is low. We know we're not competitive with the market, but people want to work here because they feel tied to the mission or they feel excited about the strategy, or they, maybe they're build talent and they are like, this is such a cool opportunity for me. This is an organization I want to be a part of. It's got the best culture around. And we explicitly state, hey, we're going to pay people at the 40th percentile. And I signed up for that. So, yeah, interestingly enough, our nonprofits tend to go more towards kind of mid market or pay for performance than they do below market on the ones in our client base. Egalitarian. So this is, I don't normally see this in a lot of organizations, but you could do something like the base pay is this rate, and everybody at this level gets this base pay rate. And then if we're going to make any changes, everybody goes up at the same time. I tend to see it more with group rewards, so incentive programs where it could be, hey, we're going to do a profit share and we're going to divide this bucket of money by 20 people, and everybody gets a chunk of that. And it's not delineated by performance or tenure or level of role. So that's an interesting one. I think what you can do in that scenario, if you use it, is you can de-incentivize top performers, because they don't need to do as much to get the same amount. But you also can use it in different ways, like benefits. Our benefits are equal. We don't have tiered different kinds for different levels in an organization. And I've seen it supplemented in that way, or the perks. Everyone has access to this perk, things like that. So then we have um, Market Plus. So this is the one I was alluding to. A friend of mine told me this term. I don't know actually if it's I should ask him if he copyrighted it, but it's Market Plus. So this is kind of when I was saying, for example, the AI engineers within our organization have to be at this Market Plus rate because it's so hard to find them. It's so hard to retain them. I can't pay them at the 50th percentile like the rest of the organization. And so that's the terminology that we use here. Slightly above market value, above what our normal compensation philosophy is, but it's specific to the role, to the department, however you would categorize that. And then unstructured, this is what we all do. When we start, we are just like, hey, I don't know we don't have compensation data. So what feels fair, or what do I think might be fair? Or maybe I look around at some competitors to see what they're offering in the market. The one place I would caution you against looking at competitors' information is you don't know what their compensation philosophy is. And sometimes that gets us into hot water. We're all of a sudden paying competitive rates when it's not sustainable for us. And again, maybe overpaying people. So a lot of people, again, we start here and we want to pick one of the structures and kind of move our company through that. And then it's all about, does this work? So considerations, Wyatt, you'll probably have some good examples here. So the first thing we want to ask when we're building a compensation philosophy is, where are we going to benchmark to? So you could say, I'm based in Denver, we're benchmarking to Denver rates. If you move, to Seattle or to San Francisco, your rate still stays the same, your compensation still stays the same. Other people say, I pay based on where you live. And so that would potentially work for you, especially if you have someone who's living in a less expensive market. They're called, they use the terms tiers. So there's tier one, which is the most expensive, tier two, which is second, which Denver sits in, and then tier three is kind of the rest of the nation, which is usually kind of like right in the middle of the states. So having that conversation is super helpful. Having that in mind, this is how we do it. The benefit of just using one place is, it's easier to attract talent from someone who doesn't have to pay so much for living expenses. And then you're not at risk if someone moves to San Francisco. But then also, if that person moves to San Francisco and they can't support themselves, they might eventually have to find something else. How do we handle people who occupy multiple roles? So going back to that accountability matrix and talking about the stage two businesses, many of us sit in different seats. Wyatt, you as an example, growth manager, manager, and then people operations manager. So when I'm looking at those three roles, do I compensate him for how he spends his time in each of the roles? Do I compensate? So if it's, let's say it's, and I know this doesn't add up to 100, but like 30, 30, 30, or do I pay him for the most expensive seat he sits in? Or how do I align his compensation? Those are things to think about. Um, do we reward tenure? This is always a big one. I had a client who did $1,000 bonus for every year. So you got $1,000 on your first anniversary, and then $10,000 on your 10th. And that was always kind of a fun bonus to hand out, and really showed, hey, we really appreciate that you're staying. Some people do that through, hey, our normal cost of living increase we do is like 3%. For every additional year you've been here, we're going to add another percent to it. you'd have to model that out and see if it's sustainable. But yeah, do you want to incentivize people to stay for a long time at your organization? It could also be equity. That's, a lot in the startup realm. Um,
What are
how do we, yeah.
what are some examples where a company wouldn't necessarily care so much about rewarding or incentivizing longer tenure?
Um, I'm thinking like again, if you're going through some pretty intense growth and you know that the team I have now is not the team that's gonna, be the same in a year or two, maybe you're not as interested in rewarding tenure. And I do love working with shadow equity programs. One of them you could do kind of on a profit share model. It'll mimic equity a little bit, but it's also I want to pay you for the work that you're doing now because it is critical to get us from point A to point B. But when we get to point B, your role becomes less critical. And so if I've already given you, 5, 10% of the company, I can't take that back. And so that's when the shadow programs are really good or the profit shares or things like that. Yeah. How do you reward above and beyond performance or extraordinary effort? And sometimes the answer is you get more work. Yay. And sometimes it's compensation related. But yeah, how do we want to think about that? So sometimes with some of our clients, we will put a pool aside for spot bonuses. We'll say, you get to hand out $200 to Amazon every time someone does something really cool. Here's your budget, use it well. There are organizations that do that as a function as well. I want to say Bonusly comes to mind. And then there's also, you get to do special projects. You maybe get a coach. Maybe you get to go to this learning and development program that you want to experience. But yeah, how do we show people thank you for going the extra mile? Are raises performance related? Um, so for me, for most of my clients, yes, we have aligned compensation with performance, again, in that pay for performance model. But in the competitive cost of compensation, um, egalitarian, they're not linked. It's your performance is amazing. Thank you so much. But it does not mean that you're going to get a raise. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a promotion necessarily. The other thing that I encourage people to think about and adapt is when do raises and promotions happen? It is so helpful for an employee to know, okay, this happens every January or June, and that's when I'm going to ask about it or talk about it. In the absence of information, we tend to think we need to advocate all the time, or we can always advocate all the time, but it's helpful to equip our managers with here's when I want your list of people that need to be, given a raise or a promotion, and what's your plan to backfill if we're kind of moving people out of roles. Um, if you do, so we had one client who did raises and promotions on your anniversary, meaning the employee's anniversary, which was helpful because everyone's not going through the process at the same time. And, it is based on your timeline and not the company's timeline, but it can be challenging to budget for because that's happening so many times throughout the year. But those are things to kind of think through too. And then how often can someone be promoted? What if I am a total top performer and I ask for a promotion 3 times in a year? Is that possible? Can I do two? Can I do one? You want to be careful setting too many limits, but you also want to make it reasonable for your organization to say, hey, our expectation is you're in these roles for at least 6 to 12 months, or however you want to handle that. And then how do you hire someone into the compensation philosophy? So the only time I've seen someone promoted a couple times before the year is out is because we hired them in too low. We thought that they were, you know, let's say at like a level 2 and they were really a level 4. And so we had to make those, changes. However, the best thing to do is just do it once, do one promotion as best as you can. But I would advise you hire someone into your compensation philosophy as a hypothesis. Here's where we think you are. And then in 6 months, you revisit where we write, are you aligned with your peers in your performance and in your role? So then we want to understand, we have what we think our philosophy is. We start benchmarking. We get an idea of, okay, to get everyone to this philosophy, to get them all caught up and on plan, it's going to be X number of dollars. Does that work? Is that financially feasible? Is it going to take us a little bit longer? Maybe we need to plan over several years. Um, is it equitable? Is it defensible? If your employee read your compensation philosophy, which I highly suggest doing, um, would they say, great, like this has nothing to do with who I know. This has nothing to do with how I came into this organization. This eliminates those barriers and it feels so fair and it feels really motivating. Um, Defensible, removing bias from compensation practices. In the state of Colorado, you can't ask what someone made previously from a compensation perspective so that you don't kind of get into the practice of underpaying someone and then give them, 3% increases year over year. And it's really hard for them to get to the next level. We want to have that kind of thinking in our organization as well. So we don't lose talent we really want to retain. Are the employees going to perceive it to be fair, legally compliant? We usually see the legal compliance issues and benefits when people want to have different tiered benefits in different ways. There are structures there that we need to make sure it's compliant with. And then also, again, we're removing bias because that's a really easy way to get yourself into a lawsuit. Can we communicate it to our team? Does it make sense? Is it going to make sense to them? Is it going to be motivating to them? Are we aligning our performance and company goals? Is there a world where we don't hit our targets and we've overextended ourselves financially and maybe we're not venture backed, so we'd have to go find other financing? And then the last one is, can we attract the talent we need with the philosophy we put in mind? So what we tend to see most here is people think that they put a talent strategy for a buy talent model together, and then they put the compensation for build. And so no one potentially is clicking on that. People with a tenure, they're not willing to take that type of compensation, and the people that you are getting don't have the experience that you were looking for. So that is another piece of kind of your KPIs you're going to put together to measure.
Touching back on the effectively communicating to the team, what percentage or how much of the compensation philosophy do you think companies should transparently give to everyone at the company or the whole thing?
I mean, that's a really interesting question because I think everyone's relationship with transparency is different, and I think it changes as the company grows. So I'm going to go back to this one and say, things that are equally that are defensible is and something that everyone could know, I think, are these questions. Here's how we do our compensation philosophy at the organization. And I think you could put it together in the format of a one pager. It could be a presentation like this. The other thing that I want you to introduce into this is malleability. This is our hypothesis. This is what we think. This is what we're trying and what works for our company now. This is something we will revisit every year. So you're getting two-way feedback, or you're getting feedback from the employees on it, and then you're giving, here's what we think from the leadership from the 30,000-foot level. So to me, these questions could be employee facing. Even if you have them answered and they are not employee facing, then you're losing the value of having it defined. So I think of it like, and you and I have had this conversation a million times, it's like you're building a board game. So imagine Monopoly, and or let's say I'm playing Monopoly and you're playing Battleship, and we are not aligned. Like, so to me, having your talent strategy clear, plus your compensation philosophy, pacing, all these things, you're building the board and we're all playing together. I understand what gets me ahead two paces. I understand what gets me sent to jail. And we as a company align with, are we holding true to this, true to our values, what we incentivize and de-incentivize? So to me, I think this could be public, and I think it'll save you some headache. Especially even so, some of our clients who have the more mission-based philosophy, we have put that on our website to say, hey, we know we pay below market. This is why. This is who we want. This is who's going to be the right fit for us. And then It's clear, and I'm not going to come in trying to change my situation because I signed up for it. And I understand when it'll be revisited and how decisions are made, and they're consistent. And I think it creates this layer of psychological safety for everybody in the organization. Oh my gosh, I think we did it in 15 minutes. Okay, so we're almost there. So now I'm going to jump. So now the plan is we measure how is this working? And this is back to the hypothesis. So I'm going to give you some of the KPIs that we use to help us understand if we got it right. So, one, performance ratings by department, by role. Is this working? And then you want to know early why not. So, especially if it's a build person that you brought in, what are they lacking? Is it management? Is it structure? Did you really need someone who had been there, done that, and you underhired for the role? And then is it possible to kind of move them into a different situation? How long is it taking you to hire? So again, if you miscalculated what type of a position it is, nobody's applying to it, it's taking too long, or people are dropping out in the process, then you know, okay, maybe we got that wrong. Let's go back to the drawing board. Employee satisfaction scores, that's always really helpful. Exit interviews, those are gold mines. So you're going to kind of put it all together, and then here's your measuring sticks. Again, give it, if you can give it 6 months, it's super helpful. Not that you can't make changes, you can't give more infrastructure, more support. But I know some of our clients, for sure, we've all had the experience of, okay, it's been 2 months, it's not working, we have to make a change. Let's make sure that we're looking at why it's not working. Okay. For
Amazing.
here.
Uh, so Amy, there's a lot of things in here. It seems like none of these are necessarily the only choice or the right choice, and there's pros and cons to each of these different choices. If someone is like, wow, I understand what you're talking about, but how do I pick which pacing I am? Or how do I pick which compensation philosophy? Or if I'm paying geographically or not geographically? Like, how can they, A, help work towards answering that question? And how can, something like Talent to Team help answer those questions?
Yeah, so in our follow-up, I think you'll get a copy of the presentation. You'll get a copy. We have a checklist, a Word doc as well to kind of walk through it, just to help reframe, remind you what you're doing, all the components you're putting together. One place I sometimes start is, what's your fiscal political agenda? And I mean that, and I'm asking the founder that, and I mean it not about, anything to do with current administration. But to give the framework, I've built compensation philosophies for people who are on the libertarian side. And so their talent strategy needs to be buy talent. They want to give them as much money as possible, and they want to invest in as little bit of structure and benefits as possible. At the opposite end, it is, we're going to do more build, so we're going to have more junior talent because our salaries are going to be slower, but our mission, maybe we're more mission based, and our incentive compensation structures are bigger, and someone's going to come work for us because it's such a great place to get developed, and we're holding money for that thing. So I think that's a good place to start, because what's most important is that what you're building is authentic to you. If it is hard for you to cut the check every time you're paying someone commission or you're giving them a bonus, you're probably misaligned with your own organization. And I'm kind of a believer in no judgment. You can build whatever works for you, and that will work as long as you're able to attract and retain talent. And then you'll make changes as the market pressures you too, as you need to change or update your plans. But I think, if you are trying to build this on your own, don't hesitate to reach out, come to my office hours. I would happily just, get deep on your situation for a little bit. We can also go into the comp tools and look up a couple of roles, especially if you're about to post for some things and you're curious how to structure it.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit more about your office hours as well?
Yeah, the link will be in the email because I don't see it here, but it's between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. every Friday. I just hang out and talk to founders or HR people or whomever wants to talk to me. Sometimes it's no one, but they're 30-minute slots.
Yep. And the link to sign up for those will be included in the take home that we'll send after this webinar as well.
Yeah.
Does
Perfect. So I think, yeah,
um,
we were going to do Q&A, right?
yeah, if anyone wants to submit questions in there, also if I think we can like allow people to talk. I don't know if we can allow everyone to talk, but if you want to
Mm,
submit just like a in the Q&A like a me, and then I can unmute you if you want. If that's
yeah.
helpful.
We can also end early if we want to end early. But I love how many HR people are in here. It's a fun group. I'm super curious if anyone has a different perception, different way of looking at it.
If there is a history or feeling of the team being undercompensated, how do you help assuage that?
Benchmarking, do a comp study, help everyone understand you have been compensated at market. Those total reward statements are worth their weight in gold. And I would do them typically annually. So if you link compensation with performance, um, I would prepare a total reward statement and have that, presented after the review period. With
So
no ability to increase comp. We did a comp study, but it was 2023, so maybe worth a new one. Yeah, I would suggest. Again, check out these tools. Open Comp is not that expensive, and it will help you level everybody into your organization, and they'll have access to those statements as well. And sometimes it's even more trustworthy coming from a compensation tool. They feel um, even more comfortable with the information.
yeah. In my experience, I like the information and the way that OpenComp presents the data better than Pave. However, Pave is a great, totally free with some caveats. For Pave to be free, you do have to link it to your payroll or HRIS system. And that doesn't give you access to all of the functionality, but it does give you access to benchmark roles, which is really beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, in my office hours, I can always look up individual roles. Pave is free. You can get the information. It's free. One thing I will caution you on, they acquired Option Impact a while ago. And so I felt that it was a little inflated for tier two markets, the compensation that they had. And again, that's why we're checking a couple different places. But Pave, and that may have changed because again, it's free. Everyone can upload their information. Um, but the modules that you pay for in Pave are the total reward statements, and then I think performance management. Why I don't know if I'm right.
Performance management, and they have some other like international tools and some other different market data that you can get through paid modules as well.
Okay, Crystal, give me a little context. So it's a flatter organization. You're moving someone up to the next level. Oh my gosh, look what we did. Hot seat, sister.
Daggone it.
I
Hello.
love this.
So I have a flatter organization, meaning like we already have folks in level 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
We do have a level 4, but no one really goes into that level. What happens is they get promoted up to manager 1 from there. Not
Mhm,
everybody is a manager candidate, and sometimes they want to grow, move into a level
mhm.
4. So how do we handle that if we don't really want to put people into level 4, right? So you don't really have growth to move up. Is it just a let's help you work your way out situation?
So why wouldn't we want to build a level four parallel to the manager path and allow individual contributors to go up in parallel to managers? Maybe not all the way, but tell me why you wouldn't want to do that.
I think it could potentially be there are so many level 3s that not all of them can become level 4s,
Oh,
or
yeah.
not all of them can become managers. It's just like a funnel, right? But it's like a reverse funnel. So you don't want to end up having like 40 managers at the top and 2 people at the bottom in ICs.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you kind of have like a bloated pipeline. You're stuck. You have nowhere to move some people. So then what do you do? I mean, the question, what kind of a business is it? Is it a services business?
Yeah, professional services.
Okay. So then the other concern might be that the clients won't be able to absorb the cost.
That's an issue too. Yeah.
Because if you to make the individual contributor. Okay. So I guess, yeah, you could potentially work them out. You could have a like an externship program where, hey, like we'll place you with clients and you can continue your growth journey, or we'll give you opportunities to I think I would start to then move sideways. You know, can we give them opportunities to specialize? Can we, who would be the best fit to go into management? Um, and I would also look at long-term compensation incentives if you want them all to stay. You know, it's maybe for some reason we've tapped out here, but the company growth and like performance objectives, that's where you can earn extra opportunities, extra um, bonuses, what have you.
I like that. Yeah. That sideways growth, the learning and development opportunities, the special projects and incentivizing them in a way where maybe it's not compensation and maybe it's not being able to move upwards, but maybe it's additional growth sideways.
Yeah, it could be. And I also, we're kind of playing around with the idea, we've talked about this before, but you know, let's say like the manager role is only for a year. And so everyone gets to cycle in and out of that. And you get to experience the company in a different way and have inputs on that. And then, yeah, the sideways specialization is fun too.
Yeah. Awesome. I am going to, perfect. Wow.
Kick
Like
her right out.
master of the
Uh,
universe.
you have all the power.
Awesome. Any other questions in the next few minutes? Otherwise, we can end a little early. Everyone who's attending, and I believe everyone who signed up and wasn't able to make it, will also get the recording to this and a follow-up document, including a checklist and then Amy's office hour link.
Yep. Yeah, and don't hesitate to reach out. Those are fun conversations for me too. And I guess I can give you a little perspective on what our other clients are doing and some similar industries that you may have. Um, but yeah, these are big topics, big questions. So hopefully it was helpful. And thank you all for coming.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care.